This is my brother, Trevor. Works for Good Old Games. If not mistaken, a video game company out of Poland. And I'm interviewing him today on basically how his industry works. And I guess I'll start off by asking, what are the main ways you market Good Old Games? Like, what do you find is the best way to reach your customers?
Sure. Because GOG is an online business, almost all of our marketing occurs online. We are a store that sells games for download through the internet straight to your computer. And due to the nature of that business, you have to go to our website, buy the games online, put in your credit card information online, and download them. It all happens online. So when we've done print advertising before, and we've done it a couple of times, we found the conversion rates pretty crap. So what we do for marketing at GOG is we have a few different areas we work in. We work in social media marketing, which is awesome because social media only costs more or less the time that you put into it. So here in Poland, where salaries are low, return on investment is always very good. We also do some straight advertising, whether you're talking about Google search advertising, whether you're talking about buying advertising on affiliate networks, or whether we're talking about buying advertising on social media like Facebook. And then finally, we do search engine marketing and search engine optimization, where we're buying Google ads and where we're trying to figure out how to make us rank better in Google so that when people search for terms that involve the games that we sell, we tend to rank well for them.
How do you find AdWords is working? I know it's got the Google Analytics. Do you get a lot of revenue from that, or?
Yes, we use Google Analytics as one of our main methods for tracking when traffic comes in. We also have a financial dashboard built into the whole back end to our website. So every game that's sold, we track where the game was sold, who bought it, what publisher we owe royalties to, whether or not we have to pay VAT, what the download costs were. We track all of these things. So we have a very robust financial tool on the back end that tells us what games sold. And then on the other end, to check and see where traffic's coming from, we use Google Analytics. We use a service called Bitly, because when you use Bitly, it's a link shortener. So when you share a link, we always include in it Google Analytics link tracking. So we have GOG.com/game/ I don't know, Baldur's Gate, and then $UTM equals, and a bunch of stuff. And rather than share that giant link on social media, which won't work because that's already more characters than Twitter will let you use, we shorten it with Bitly to get a short link, but then that short link contains in it all this coded information so that we're feeding deliberately designed things to Twitter. So I can say, here on Twitter, this Bitly link contains in it the information that it's a social media link and it's sent from Twitter. Meanwhile, I share a different Bitly link to the same page from Facebook and it said this is a social media link, but it's Facebook instead. So it lets me tag and track the effectiveness of each of these channels and how much money they bring.
All right. So the forum, you have an online GOG forum or GOG forum. To what extent does that bring in new customers, or is it just for interacting with current customers? How does that work?
The forum does not bring in a lot of new customers. The forum serves three different key uses at GOG. First of all, once you come to GOG, it gives you a reason to stay. There's a community there. We have about 35,000 people who post actively any given week. And that's enough where, or if they don't post, at least they're reading and they're posting irregularly. That's enough where it's a thriving community, even though it is very much hands-off. We don't devote hardly any time at all to moderation. There's only one rule in the forums, and everybody who's a forum regular knows it, which is be civil. You can talk about anything you want as long as you're civil about it. And if you're not civil about it, then I shall show up with my mallet of loving correction and ban you. So it gives our current customers a reason to stay. It also serves really well for long-tail search terms. And what that means is when I'm searching for buy Baldur's Gate, that's a fairly common search phrase. I mean, not in the scope of Google, but if you want to buy a game and you search buy in the game, that's a fairly common search phrase. So ranking for that, which we do rank well for that on the search engines, is good, but just being able to have a product page that has Baldur's Gate for sale doesn't accomplish anything if the person's actually searching, how do I get Baldur's Gate 2 to run on my Windows 7 PC? Increasingly, Google is seeing long-tail search terms show up, search terms of 8, 10, 12, 16 different words, which is bizarrely long because it's getting better and better at parsing natural language. Now, when you want to rank well on those long-tail search terms, you really need somebody else to be writing content for you. And what you need is a forum topic on GOG, where someone actually wrote, as the topic for the forum, how do I get Baldur's Gate to run on my Windows 7 PC? Now there's a perfect URL match for whatever the search term was. So they search for that question, they see on our forums, 1, we sell the game, 2, here's how you get it to work, it already works when you buy it on GOG. As a result, we've had the capacity to make a sale there that we wouldn't have if we had only had Buy Baldur's Gate 2. So the forum provides a lot of long-tail search term stuff. And then finally, the forum does give a way for new content to show up on the site constantly. One of the things that search engines look at when they're rating how good your domain is, how they give you page rank in the case of Google, is looking at how often you have new content. In the case of GOG, our forum sees a new post every probably between 5 minutes to 30 seconds, depending on the time of day. So because they're always active and there's a lot of users there, there's an obvious correlation there. We have a large user base that stays. That means we must be a quality website. So those are the 3 different purposes we get out of having a forum.
Great. So then, what are being in Poland? There must be some issues that come up in marketing. You know, difficulties, challenges, strange errors in translation, what have you. Can you tell us a little bit about any of that, or?
Sure. One of the constant things that confounds me in Poland and in the EU in general is the burdensome existence of legislation. I know people are like, America has too much burden on the businesses and they can't succeed because we set them up to fail with all these conflicting laws. That's crap, I'll tell you what. You want an example of burdensome legislation here, I will grant you, I had a box sent to me from America. Here's a piece of paper. I just got this today. They have scanned the mailing slip, and I now have to, in order to claim this box, make an invoice in Polish, which there doesn't exist one, so I have to put one together in Photoshop. I have to look up in some magic book online, not even online, sorry, in person, what the specification number of the product is. It's a pair of shoes. So I have to go find what the Great Polish Directory of Products is and find shoes, and then put that down. Then I have to include a statement that this is a gift and not something I purchased in Polish, but sent by the original author, or original purchaser, and I have to include a copy of my passport, my Polish ID, and proof that I have paid taxes this year. That required to receive something from customs. I also have to pay customs, the customs fee for this. So contrast that to in America, when you get a box and you pick it up at the post office and you go home and you enjoy your box. You know, that's just an example on the human side of things. On the business side of things, we did a charity promotion last month where we were raising money for charity. And we started 6 weeks before the charity and said, I'm going to go start a charity in Cyprus that's goal is to pass money on to other charities. That way this is a tax-deductible donation for us. It takes almost 6 months to make a charity in Cyprus, and the idea that you couldn't just go and fill out paperwork and be done in a day never occurred to me. So this sort of thing is a challenge. As far as the Polish itself causing problems, the main difficulties we see are because we're a Cyprus headquartered organization as far as our taxes are concerned. A lot of American banks are like, based out of Cyprus, must be a pyramid scheme. So we won't actually let you send money to this random company in Cyprus because they're probably trying to break the law. Now, that's not the case, but some American banks tend to look at things that way. The other challenge can be, although we charge in dollars, because that's the currency we charge in worldwide, because the bank is in Cyprus, some American banks insist on paying in euro, which has a transaction fee then involved. When I'm an American buying something in dollars and I get charged 25% extra on top in euro and conversion fees, and you're like, what the hell? I'm paying from dollars to dollars, but I had to pay to convert the money on the way. Other than that, there's no real challenges. I mean, the people who work in the marketing team in particular have very good English. Translation problems are rare since I've started here. They were more common back before I was working here, but my English is very good, and I require that level of English out of my people, so they do a good job.
Okay. Conventions. I know you went to, what was it, PAX East?
Yes.
Was that most recent one, or?
Well, we went to PAX Prime, actually. We went to PAX Prime in 2011. We have also been to E3, GDC, and Gamescom. E3 is in LA. We've been to GDC America and GDC Europe, GDC America being in America and GDC Europe being in Europe, and then Gamescom, which is actually the largest trade show open to the public in the world. It routinely receives like 400,000 people.
Wow.
So, what's your question about them?
Yeah. What percentage of new customers can you bring in like that? Is that? Sorry, my other computer went to sleep. Like, are there a lot brought in from that, or is it mostly all online, or to what extent is that useful for your business?
Showing up in person for a trade show is really more of a branding thing than anything else. Okay. The first trade show that GOG went to as like GOG was PAX Prime in 2011, and we did a completely insane booth that's unlike anything anybody else would ever see at a trade show.
Was that the
that's the cookies and the grannies, yeah. Everybody at trade shows tries to market with, you know, slick presentation, giant LED screens, hot booth babes, loudspeakers, and instead we had a booth space decorated like someone's grandmother's living room, and then we had grandmothers actually handing out freshly baked cookies that were baked on the premises. And so we had everybody in the show floor come by because they could smell the cookies being baked. Now, it was a huge hit, and we got to the front page of Reddit, and we were on the front page for like 12 hours. We got covered by every piece of news media everywhere. Actual user acquisition wasn't that great, but it did bring our brand to a lot of people's minds, and it also kind of changed the public perception of our brand, because almost a year before, we shut the site down for 3 days as kind of a prank, but also kind of a PR stunt to get attention around the fact that we were exiting beta. I wasn't working there at the time, or I would have told them, no, stop that, what are you doing? No, for God's sake, no. But I wasn't working there at the time. So from then until we did this thing at PAX, people called us GOG, you know, those who shut their site down did something, 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 something. And after we did the grannies and the cookies, people stopped referring to us as those who shut their site down. So that was kind of a change in our branding perception. Whenever you go to a live trade show event, I don't think you're going to get a lot of customers there, and you won't make much money directly unless you're selling such a high-margin item. You know, if you go to an aeronautics trade show and you're selling fighter jets, then yes, you sell one fighter jet, you paid for the trade show. When you're selling video games, I'd have to sell. Cost of a trade show will run you between, I'd say, $50,000 on the low end, all the way up to $250,000 on the high end. And so if we're making game sales at $6 a game, and we pay 70% of all of our money to the publishers, so we only get 30%, you know, we're making $1.50, $2 a game. We have to sell 100,000 games at the trade show to make up the $50,000 cost of the trade show. That's never going to work out. But for branding, for increased exposure, and for helping people get the message so that the next time they hear about you, they're willing to give you money, is really what trade shows do for you. We've found consistently The actions that are most effective for us as far as bringing in new users are either giving away something free, which isn't that surprising, or doing something that's completely unexpected and which generates a lot of attention around the weirdness of it. We had, during the government shutdown, we ran a shutdown promo on GOG with the slogan of showing you how governments work in case yours doesn't.
I saw that one.
Yeah, so we were selling capitalism, we were selling the Guild, we were selling Alpha Centauri, we were also selling Theme Hospital since it was the reason for the shutdown, and then we were selling Redneck Rampage for reasons we didn't disclose. So that sort of thing got covered everywhere and got us a lot of users because people signed up because they got the joke. We also did, right now we're finishing up a promotion based on the idea of selling limited numbers of games at really high discounts with a ticker on the front page, so you can watch the bar go down as more and more games sell, and then the next game shows up immediately thereafter. So there's kind of this addictive, it's kind of like Whoop, but for digital games. And we've gotten thousands and thousands of users who signed up for this because it's a crazy idea. A lot of people talked about it, and they signed up because they're like, hey, I want this game. The other thing that will bring us users is a new game that's really interesting. When we signed System Shock 2, we got tens of thousands of new accounts just because of that. Those are much better ways for a digital business like ours to bring in users than actually going to a trade show. Hello?
There we go. All right, back. Sorry about that. Okay, where were we? About conventions.
We had just finished talking about conventions, and I had mentioned the ways that we had that were more effective than conventions for bringing in new customers, given the high cost of conventions and the low value per customer that any digital business like ours has.
Right. So, you mentioned giving away free things, the shutdown special, and I know you had some issues with one guy during the shutdown special, and that was a fairly amusing post that maybe I can link to at some point. But how do you usually deal with your problem customers without angering the rest of the community?
That can sometimes be tricky. Most people who are just incensed and angry over stupid things can't really unify the community behind them because the rest of the community is going to say that's a pretty stupid thing you're angry about. There are, on the other hand, some people who are more or less full-time trolls. They think that their mission in life is to make you angry because they find it funny. They call it trolling, I call it being a dick. So when they do that, I generally warn them first and say, you do have to be civil. Part of being civil means not provoking other people. It means saying, to the person who, if there's a user who everyone knows really isn't a fan of RTSs, finding every post he made for the last 2 weeks and says, yeah, but this RTS is better than that stupid game you like, will provoke a reaction that seems out of character when on some thread that mods will be looking at, you say, yeah, but you like stupid games, this RTS is much better, at which point that user will say, go f*** yourself, you stupid piece of f***. And then a mod would tend to be like, well, let me ban the guy who's apparently crazy and attacking this guy who just likes RTSs, as opposed to looking into it and saying, oh, look, you're apparently a troll and an unpleasant human being. So finding those people out and treating them properly can be a pain. When you do something that is a provocative statement, like our shutdown promo, dealing with people who get angry, I mean, the angriest guy, the guy who was crusading on social media and in our forums and emailed the director of the company and the owner of the group and was like, I find this behavior reprehensible. I think that you guys are uneducated Polish yokels who should not get involved in American politics because you don't even understand what's going on. And I said to him, that's great. I'm sorry you're upset. I'm the head of marketing PR. I'm an American, and I wrote the news post and came up with the idea for the promo. And he went, oh, well, then I guess it's okay. Now, truth of the matter is, I didn't write the news post, and I didn't come up with the idea for the promo, although as the head of marketing and PR, it is, in the end, my responsibility that both of these things happened. So I effectively did, but I also knew that would kind of take the wind out of his sails. And because I am an American, and I did push this idea on once one of my employees thought of it, and I approved the news post once it was written, I thought it was pretty funny. Most of the internet did too. We had about 5% of the people were really angry, but you know, about 5% of the internet thinks the correct response to any stimulus is outrage. You could be like, I've invented unicorns, and they'd say, "Brr, you've destroyed the world." Because that's what some people are. So, dealing with those people, you have to realize some people are just unpleasant humans. Hello, Tiana. Other than that, learning the way to redirect anger and emotion so that it's not directed at you anymore without calling the person out is really more of a PR tactic than a marketing tactic. It's using a combination of sales tactics and just common sense to take someone's upset, you sympathize with them, and then you say, "I'm sorry for you." But there's a process to it, which goes into more, again, the PR side than marketing.
All right. Well, I guess the last one will be kind of off topic. How has your overall experience with being in Poland been? Maybe not directly related to good old games, but just in general. I know you've had a few funny stories. Maybe we can have a best of section.
Sure. I do like Poland. I do like Europe for the most part. Some of the regulation stuff is stupid. Trying to get stuff mailed to you is stupid. But other than that, I don't particularly have much in the way of complaints. I like it here. The people I work with are all pretty cool. I enjoy working in the gaming industry. There are some challenges. Polish is a hell of a language to learn. Oh, my word, is it a hell of a language to learn? It ranks up there with like Mandarin and Farsi because they have a grammar system that is logical and orderly and is never actually followed. So, you know, they took the idea of Latin, which is you have verb conjugation, you have noun declension. That way you can't have any possible instances where there's confusion over what part of the verb is happening to what part of the noun. It's always very clear. But then the way you conjugate the verbs and declen the nouns doesn't make any sense because literally every single word is different, it seems like. So that could be unpleasant. Other than that, for a marketer working in Poland and in Europe seems a bit like going to, I guess, the easy mode of marketing. Because marketers in at least Poland, I haven't necessarily worked in other parts of Europe, don't grasp capitalism the way that we do. And in general, the viewpoint is different on how selling happens and on why selling happens. And so in some ways it's easier because you can propose things and speak with authority on things that they don't understand or necessarily know because that's not in their educational background. But in some ways it's harder because it's a given in an American business that one of the surest ways to bring users in, to bring customers in to your business is to acquire enough users and convert those users to customers, however you do it. You know, the wider you make the start of your sales funnel, whether it's 100,000 or 1 million or 10 million, provided that your funnel comes down to whatever 5% acquisition rate. You start with 100,000, you'll get 5,000 people out of it. You start with 10 million, you'll get 500,000 customers. And the idea of that applies universally doesn't always click here. As an example, the idea of when you have a plan for a marketing strategy put in place, and reality doesn't meet the plan, adjusting to it Polish people tend to be more like, well, that was planned, so we will stick to. And not always does that work. But overall, living in Poland is pretty awesome. I like it. Working with these people, they're all cool people. They are almost all of them gamers. The company right now is 60 people. And out of those 60 people, I think 5 of them don't play video games as one of their preferred hobbies. So that's a pretty good ratio of people who are gamers, and it shows. One of the things that we do at GOG that a lot of companies don't is that all of our employees have the ability to post to the forums as a moderator, as a blue text, to show that they're special. And about 10 of them do. And there really hasn't been anything in the way of training for these people, with the exception of, be civil. Like the same rule I have for all the forum members applies to our employees as well. And they do overwhelmingly a good job. They occasionally do screw things up, but even then they're fairly minor. And the community likes knowing that they can talk to the person who writes the code for the downloader, or they can talk to the person who makes all the product pages, or they can talk to the QA team who approved this game. They know being able to make that interaction, it makes them feel like this is not a giant monolith like Blizzard or EA or Activision with thousands of employees. And that human touch goes a long way towards making a customer into a fan. And when someone's a fan, that's when they say, no, dude, you got to go try this company out because they're doing really cool things. So it's cool that the employees here, who overwhelmingly have English well enough that they can communicate on the forums, but are all also gamers and authentic enough they can communicate on the forums and speak the language of geek. That's very handy. So that's one thing I think in any American company, I don't think they would be naive enough to just give all the employees the ability to post to the forums. Because when this company started, they were like, sure, why not? What can it hurt? And they've never changed their mind. Here we are 5 years later, they're still doing that. I think in America, corporate America would have kicked in by now, and they'd be like, sensitivity training and seminars on the way to deal with this, and social media, and this, and they would all be crap. So that's kind of cool, too.
Right on. So the one I forgot to ask, so this is going to be a little out of order, but oh well. Steam. You guys obviously compete with them on some level.
We do.
How is that going, and how does that work? That seems like a fairly difficult one to compete with.
Well, Steam is definitely the market leader, and they're hugely the market leader. We have publicized, I think the last number we made public were we do 2 million unique visitors to our website every month. Steam has 4 and 5 million people connected to Steamworks every day. So they are substantially bigger than us in terms of users, but what is interesting is we actually compete way above our, I'd say, our weight range when it comes to sales. We have found that consistently we're doing 10 to 15% of their sales on titles that launch on both GOG and Steam at the same time.
Wow. Why is that, do you think?
I think our user base is more active, they're more engaged, and they're more willing to pay full price. Keep in mind that Steam's 65 million users, because they recently hit that user base, includes all the users who don't go to their website anymore because they bought a game back in 1998, which was Half-Life 2, played it, and have since gone on to do other things like anything. That also include people who go buy games from Humble Indie Bundle, and buy games from Groupies, and buy games from the Indie Royale Bundle, and buy games from Bundle Stars, and all these places where you get 6, 7, 10, 12 games for $5. Those people aren't going to pay the new price for a game because they have spent the last 2 and 3 years thinking of a game as something you buy a 5-pack for $6 for. Whereas our user base still sees games increasingly as something that you pay $5 to $10 for still. So a new game rolls out and 90% of Steam's audience isn't going to buy anyway because either they don't check Steam anymore or because they don't pay money for new games. So as a result, we hold our own, I'd say. We aren't direct competitors for Steam, and we don't actually see ourselves as directly competing with Steam. Our business model is a little bit different than theirs is. Among other things, Steam sells you software. We sell you support for software. Because all the games that we initially started to sell back when we launched GOG, they were old games. These were all games that had been not available for sale in retail anywhere for a decade or more, but which had been available for piracy wildly on the internet, anywhere you want. But they're kind of a pain in the ass to get running. So what we did that was different is we said we will get these games running on modern computers, and then we will sell them. So you're not really paying $6 for a copy of Baldur's Gate or Jagged Alliance or Populous. You're paying $6 for a working copy that you don't have to do anything except you double-click the icon and it installs. So when you buy a game from GOG, you buy a game with the promise it will work on whatever the next operating system is. So that's one reason why we're a little different than Steam. And the other thing is we really look at our main competition as piracy. We want to bring pirates over to join GOG more than we want to bring Steam users to join GOG. Because there are more pirates than there are Steam users, for one. And as you age as a pirate, you eventually reach the point where finding a good torrent that's well-seeded and doesn't have malware in it is more of a bother than paying $6 or $10 is. I know to you that sounds crazy, Roland, but imagine in 5 years when you actually have decent income. You'll be like, man, it'll be a pain in the butt if I actually had to go find the proper torrent for this, and then there's only one person seeding it, so the connection's so slow, and whatever, all this crap. If you can just be like, I'm going to download this, pay for it, $6, whatever, I can always find it again, and I know it'll work on my computer. That's a pretty good call to action when you're looking at other things you'd be paying $6 for instead. So that's kind of, our main competitors are really more, Humble Bundle is a big competitor of ours because they sell a lot of the game we do for cheap and they are DRM free. And then Pirates are our other big competitor. We're trying to compete with those guys more than we're trying to compete with Steam.
All right. So then my last question for you is, you obviously do online videos occasionally. Can you recommend any software for bleeping so I can show this to my professor?
Software for bleeping. You can import this into any video editor you like and just scrub out the audio, or you could just cut around it in YouTube. I believe in YouTube you can actually play with audio levels, and at that point you should be able to, in YouTube itself, just cut the audio out for whatever those lines are, or remove, those parts entirely. I wasn't sure what your intended use for this was. If I'd known you were trying to be a professor, I would have tried to have been politer about it. But right. So okay. Or you can say to your professor, my brother has Tourette's. He can't help it. Don't judge him for that.
Thank you, Boondock Saints reference. All right. Well, I guess I'll end the broadcast there, and I don't know if that'll keep you on or not. We'll see.